wow, what a day it has been so far. I think we've had a amazing turnout and some amazing speakers who have come in all day today. So welcome to my guests over here. I'm not going to waste too much time on the intro that has already been done. So we have discussed about the digital payments part locally and globally. I would like to now pivot more towards the a little bit on the infrastructure part and on the cyber security part because I think that was earlier discussed as well. And but I'll start with Dr. Aftab Rizvi. Because you've heard during the course of the day that Pakistan is heavily moving towards financial inclusion. I mean, we have 103 million unique customers, a population of 138 adult. So that's about 67%, if not more, financial inclusion, purely from a deposit-based perspective. But with obviously with financial inclusion and the number of accounts we have, and you've heard about the trillions of transactions are going through, we also have millions of non-tech savvy customers. And in Pakistan, of course, and like in the rest of the world, there are billions of rupees of losses every year through scams and so on and so forth. So how can local banks, you feel, that enforce strict data classification and encryption, at the back end to protect sensitive, citizen data and, of course, the threats, internal and external?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank PBS, PBA to invite me here. This is a very valid question, what you're asking, and I think I'm a very traditional person, and I like to take the tradition to start with a verse from Allama Iqbal, and that is very relevant to what we're talking about. And that is that सुकून मुहाल है कुदरत के कारखाने में, सुकून मुहाल है कुदरत के कारखाने में, सबात एक तगय्युर को है ज़माने में. What does this really mean for Max and the fan? That there is only one thing which is constant in this world. That's my translation. Don't take it a literal translation. And that is change. So what we are going through every time is change. And this change means that we need to adapt. We need to learn new techniques, new ways to overcome the problems we are facing. So the type of stats you're talking about, I was very shocked to see that as well. $9.3 billion of fraud, more than the IMF funds we get. It is 2.5% of the GDP, I think. So this is a very large number. So we are in a very difficult position. We definitely want the financial inclusion. We want those people who are first movers to digital. They don't understand the smartphones, and they don't understand this economy, and they are victim of social engineering or SIM swap or so many others technical issues they don't understand. So the idea is that what we're trying to do at the moment, that State Bank of Pakistan or Pakistan Telecom, PTA and those, they run the campaigns. They try to educate the people. The guy is done, get scammed, be vigilant, don't share the password. But trust me, these scammers are very intelligent, and they really use the psyche of the people, and they get the information so quickly that even educated people can can face these type of issues. So what we need to do if we really want to solve this problem is that some other technical controls which they don't have to face. Those people who are joining first time in this digital economy, they don't understand the risks, they don't understand the problems. So at the back end, there is something seamless which is helping us. And this is where it comes that how we treat data. Because what is happening is that we know there are 4 or 5 or 6 type of questions bank asks or any institution asks basically. And if that information can be revealed to the scammers, they can get their benefit. So if we want to make sure, if we can somehow take this problem out, that the data which has been stored can be secured and it can be only available to those people who really need it, that is one way of solving the problem. However, the challenge is multifold. This is not the only issue. Another issue we have here is that there are hundreds of thousands of agents who are working in the system. So the system is designed in a way there are involvement of outsiders, third parties. So that and globally, third party risk is becoming another challenge nowadays. So again, what is the challenge? Challenge is that they have got access to that data which can be manipulated. We sometimes really ignore the insider threat. The insider threat is extremely important, and these people who are part of your network by virtue of if they are a third party helping you or your IT guys, I'm not saying that we should not trust them, but they have got so much access to the information that any of the mistakes they do can cost a lot of money to the bank. So coming back to, yes, you have, your question had the answer in it, but I thought I'd just elaborate that there's data classification, identification of data at the time of ingestion is extremely important. And then the mechanisms we adopt that data is accessible to only one who can use it, and also in transit or in storage, or even someone is using it, this is encrypted.
Look, just to pivot on that, because now I will go towards the organizations. I'm sure in your experience, globally, you've seen um, many organizations which fall into the trap of being compliant on paper, but in reality, they're a bit more vulnerable, than what's on the paper. Uh, so how do we change the culture of the CISOs? I mean, in terms of their culture, in terms of check in the box, compliant mindset, more towards active risk management. And the reason I say that is because we recently concluded a cyber drill exercise for the first time in the banking industry in Pakistan, in which 34 institutions took part, sorry. And it was covered in 2 cities with all these institutions. But let me just say that the result was that more needs to be done. Let me put it this way. So how do we? What advice would you give to our CISOs?
First of all, congratulations. That was a very good initiative. I think cyber drill is the starting point just to know where you are at, what is the status, and again, continuing this is the real value you will get if you do it more often. Once is, normally people say that's the photo session. The second one and the third one, you start getting the results. So CISOs, you have, this question is very loaded in fact, that we have got CISOs and the management in the audience. What is happening is that, yes, we believe that, so this challenge cannot be solved by changing the CISOs how they work. I think this can only be handled if we understand what the board culture is, if we understand what CISO's responsibilities are, what background they come from. So when we think and analyze these challenges, what we come to know that board speaks very different language, which is numbers. CISOs are very technical. So one thing which is extremely important for any organization, especially banks, that they can quantify the risk, which is a very emerging area. It's not an easy thing to do, but that is extremely important that risk quantification can be done and board can be advised of the numbers or the repercussions which happen in terms of in the language they understand. So that is the first and most important part. The second most important part is that CISOs also look at the issues which are non-technical. What does this mean is that cybersecurity should not be considered as an IT issue. It should be considered as a governance issue. And especially today, if we saw that our minister is saying that cybersecurity is a problem, state bank governor is saying cybersecurity is a problem, that means it's not an IT problem. It's a governance problem. And actually, if we can make this mind shift change, that will solve lots of problems.
Thank you. I'll now move towards on the infrastructure side. Fan, thank you so much for being here with us. Now, Huawei is a global leader in AI-driven and IT for the tier banks, for the cloud infrastructure. And so, with your experience, obviously you cover the Middle East and this particular area in Pakistan also. What kind of infrastructure do you see for Pakistan for cloud, infrastructure, including AI, with an AI platform, with operational resilience? Because that is something, an area, where in Pakistan, because of the grid issues, on telecoms issues as well. How do you see that from your experience for Pakistan?
So firstly, thank you for inviting. Glad to be here. From my experience, because I used to work in Europe, Asian Pacific, North Africa also, and I meet a lot of CIOs, even the CEOs. So I think the most important for us is, the business continuity. I think this is the key for the banking and for the, we call also for the financial industry is the key. And how we can build all, the sustainable growth for the banking industry all around the resilience, because the resilience is not just only from a technical, even the infrastructure perspective, is the whole, how to say, operation and even the innovation driven for the bank actually. So from this perspective, with Huawei, a global footprint and experience and expertise, we divide into 4 areas. The first area is like a foundation. We are promote the resilience and autonomous infrastructure based on Huawei product and also our portfolio. That means we can build up an autonomous and the resilience for the data centers, for the campus, and for the branches, for example. And based on that, we should to think about the availability and the reliability for the application, because the banking, the service is running 24 hours, always on. So the availability and the reliability for the applications, for the services, and for the future innovation is crucial. So for this part, we divide into 2 sides. The first one is how we consider the application modernization, because a lot of bank actually is running on the legacy system, right? So for this part, we are not to change. That means to do the big bang migration from day one to future to be architecture, because it's very risky. So that means we are trying to promote, based on this foundation, how to leverage and migrate step by step from the legacy to the cloud native and cloud-based applications. And in the other side, that means for the data, because the data is one key to, how to say, to monitor the operation and support the future AI. So this part, we do have built up and shared, and the unified data platform can support the different requirements from the different business department, for example. And then we are trying to work with our ecosystem, even the bank, to set up the different AI-based scenario use cases to let the future come. That means all is from the customer requirements, is from the customer perspective. Yeah.
And if I may just ask a follow-up on this, because in Pakistan we see a lot of banks using their data on site or on prem.
Yes.
And they are a bit reluctant to go off site. I mean, within the country, but
by regulation.
Yeah. And what why do you think, or what confidence do you bring in so that the banks feel comfortable that not using cloud infrastructure as a backup, but an actual live, environment for their banking, use.
I think for me, and also I think for all the CIO and CTOs, I think the cloud, the word, is not just one service or platform. It's kind of approach for the sustainable development and delivery. Because the cloud is kind of like the microservices, like the APIs, like the open banking, it's things like this approach. And in terms of the deployment, we have the multiple deployment, like on-prem deployment, like virtualization, like private cloud, public cloud, even the hybrid cloud we can do, because Huawei, we provide the comprehensive stack for the cloud. But it need to be work with the bank. That's case by case, country by country, and customer by customer. So what is the, how to say, the regulation? Because the regulation, the regulatory, the requirements is the key. That means, for me, from the, that means the business side, all the sensitive data need to be kept and controlled by the bank on-prem. And some kind of, like the innovative services, the customer engagement, these kind of things, I think we can gradually using by like the public, even hybrid cloud services, because it's very quick to adopt and very agile to use. But all is under, the control of the banking. That means we can set up the different rules and how to say the policy. That means which kind of application and which kind of services we can use by which kind of deployment model. And in this case, we will set up, a unified 2B architecture to set up the different layer, like the technical foundation layer, data architecture, application architecture, and also for the data and the AI capability in a whole picture.
Thank you for those insights. Naman, I'm just going to ask you, you recently wrote about the nexus, the evolution of the technology trio between banks, fintechs, and tech vendors. And so as Pakistan, I mean, you've talked about Trust, of course, you've talked about UPI and PIX, and some of those global, cases. But as Pakistan, plugs localized payment schemes, like Rast into broader global networks, transaction velocities are skyrocketing, even in Pakistan, I mean, for that matter. But how can, Pakistani banks aggressively pursue this, with a collaborative fintech, model? Because we see that the development, the relationship building with fintechs is now slowly taking shape. It hasn't really been very, how should I say, forthcoming. It could be for a number of reasons. But how do you see that? Because since you are in that, area and you've played that game, so you know.
Thank you, Mr. Rahman. I think first of all, even before I go into the question, I was so excited about the topic that I didn't even thank PBF for the invitation. So let me first start out by thanking. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks a lot for the invite. I know Munish Saab worked a lot to get me over here as well, so a big thanks for that. I think if you look at two things, right? First is that what is the maturity cycle that everybody is following? The maturity cycle for anything around instant payments, digital transformation, is to be able to first be able to create scale. And you may look at Egypt, Singapore, Brazil, India, any of those scenarios, then that's the first thing of to be able to create a scale. And a lot of times the scale creation actually is to do with giving incentives and getting like you were saying, millions of people onto the platform. So I think that's a big part of it. And then it goes on to value addition. I think as we start going into value addition is where the Nexus has a massive, massive role to play. There used to be a lot of debate about whether fintechs and banks, fintechs versus banks. I think that topic has got settled quite a bit. A lot of it is around collaborations. Banks are investing into fintechs, banks are banking fintechs, banks are collaborating with fintechs. And if you look at the proliferation of a digital ecosystem, then all three players have a role to play. Banks come up with the balance sheet, with the trust, with the regulatory aspect, and that is very key. And every country is looking at it differently. If you look at Singapore and MAS, they've kept most of the regulatory aspects with banks. But if you look at UAE, over there, a lot of the fintechs are getting regulated, and a lot of the regulatory conformances are with fintechs as well. So I think that's one thing that we need to decide for every country, that where do the most regulatory aspects and regulations who need to be complied with. And then it is about collaboration across all three players. Because after the trust and the balance sheet comes the innovation and the value addition. The fintechs play a massive role in that aspect. And the technical layer of, like who I was talking about, the cloud, so whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, whether DLT, then how do we make the infrastructure 24/7, 365, completely resilient, no downtime in the cloud and the AI space? I think that's key. So I believe that all three have a key role to play, and as the three come together is when a true digital ecosystem that benefits an economy comes into play.
Thank you for that, Naman. And I know I'm a bit watchful of time, so Max, my last question is to you before we take questions from the audience. So, BII has a development, mandate. And so my question is, because as you know, you've seen it in Pakistan also, we have now 3 digital banks up and running. 2 more are, on the way. And so how do they balance, the need for financial inclusion? Because we see that most banks are operating within the urban, even though we have branches across the country and, in rural areas as well. But from digital banks' perspective, even though they want to be in that financial inclusion, part as well, and going into rural areas is a bit more expensive. How do you suggest that they manage that part? Because obviously everyone wants to be where the money is.
Yeah, that's a very good and interesting question. I think it ultimately leads back to what is probably my favorite topic within neobanking distribution, right? Because it's clear that the branch model won't work rurally, countries like Pakistan, but everywhere in the world. It's not a cost-effective way to serve rural customers. At the same time, is it working? Yeah.
It's working.
Okay. At the same time, it's also clear that an all-digital model won't work rurally. You won't come to the customers. You won't create the required trust with the customers to bank with you, because particularly rural customers, they still want to see physically what is there, who's there, who manages their money and manages their saving. So basically, the two sides of the extreme, all physical and all digital, won't work. It needs to be. How do you do the phygital model in the rural context? Well, I think the best is probably through partnerships. Again, one of our investees looked at markets, finding those partnerships to get to the rural population. It's obviously a key part, because I mean, that's a lot of demographic potential Pakistan is sitting. Unfortunately, you will notice I don't have the best answer. How do you actually go to it? I mean, you need to be creative. I think field agents, ambassadors, meeting people, where rural people like to shop, where people like to convene, like really approaching people directly through a field network. That's one way. The other way, which is always coming up, is obviously, I think, the networks in the rural space is the FMCG space. So partnering with FMCG, that's another way to go. Now, one of the neobanks which got the license, and I also know well personally, is Burak Bank, who is Fatima Fertilizer as a shareholder. So obviously, Fatima, community, they know a lot about kind of rural distribution. So again, with the local context, with the local knowledge, I'm sure you will find a model how you can serve those customers cost effectively, but it's not an easy way, because you need to find this create phygital, where you create trust, but you also approach customers in a cost-effective way. So.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, there is no one answer, I think, because I appreciate that. Well, I think this topic is so vast, I think, overall digital payments and what we do. We just need a 2-day conference just for that alone, I think. But obviously, we'll end today on this front. Now, if I may request the audience, if they have any questions, either with this panel or the panel which was here before us.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. You're right, Najib. Two questions. One is the use of cloud computing and its power for the use case of AI. So we are convinced that on-prem models and the power of GPUs is perhaps unsustainable to have an on-prem model. But when we put those computing power onto the cloud, the cost at times may get either prohibitive because of the tokens that are being consumed for processing it, or how to control that cost. So that's from your global experiences. That's the first example, because often that example is quoted against going to cloud, at least in the domestic markets. The second question is, has any of the panelists ever seen a successful example in the world, so just enlighten us, of tokenization of banking deposits and having done it successfully? Thank you.
You want to, Fan, you want to take the first question? Yeah.
Thank you for your question. I think the first question is very, how to say, hot and common, because, you know, we surely to think about with the AI era, so how we can deploy and how we need to do from not only for the banking industry, but for all the industry. Because you mentioned the electricity consumption, I think, is one of the, how to say, the elements we need to think about, whether we take the cloud service solution or on-prem solution. Because in this case, I can give you experience and the reference, because, you know, like the largest banking in China, actually, the top 10 China. So their journey is to, from the beginning, starting from the machine learning, we call the small models. So actually with the GPT, with the large language model, which is open 5 years ago, so they are think about, I need to maybe build up my own, we call it data center, the AI data center. That means with this kind of data center, we need to think about at the day one, the design of the electricity consumption, with, you know, all the cooling system and also the scalability for the future AI, how to say, the footprint. Because not only for the chip side, for the AI computing, but all around the AI, because we need to also to think about how we can integrate it with the legacy system, with the open system, and even for the external system. So in this case, we build up, you know, have the blue book in China. This means when we set up the data center and the AI capabilities, we have, how to say, from the assessment, from the design, and from the execution, we have the expertise. This means if you want to set up on-prem the AI computing and AI data center, we have, how to say, best practices here. And for public cloud, I mean, because the public cloud, we are used to work in the token-based services because it's easily to get. But in terms of the consumption, in terms of the future scalability, I think from now so far, I think is one of the questions about that. So I think the, how to say, the idea is have a hybrid, approach, but with a critical setup and the capability on-prem.
Thank you. And on the
just
tokenization?
Maybe just 2 quick points, right? I think just on AI and who I spoke a lot about the cloud piece, but I think Mr. Shamir Khalik spoke a lot about AI that we are using in Citi. One of the things which is very interesting for me is orchestration. Whenever we used to talk about orchestration and payments, it always used to be about how do we route orchestration and move all of those payments to the most efficient, fastest payment mechanism. But right now for AI models, there is a lot of work happening on orchestration itself. Because once we started using a lot of AI models, the cost around AI models can really increase exponentially. So now we are actually building an orchestration layer which can route the correct use case or the correct question or the correct inquiry that we've got to the most cost-efficient AI model. And I'll quickly move to token services. I think tokenized deposit is something very much live for Citi at least. And I know a few other foreign banks as well. I know JPM does it, HSBC is doing stuff as well. What we have done is that we have linked 5, 6 of our key cross-border payment hubs. So US, Singapore, Hong Kong, Dublin, London, these are already live. We're getting Citi token services to UAE and Japan this year, which are going to be live. And the way we are doing it is that we're doing a sandwich, a token sandwich, a coin sandwich. So we have kept the complexity of the DLT away from the client. The client is able to, through the online banking portals, be able to access our Citi token services. We mint the coin, we move the funds real time, 24/7, 365, and then we burn the coin. But that's how it is very much live. We moved billions of transactions for hundreds of clients. We believe it should ramp up significantly in the future.
Great. Any other question?
About digital SME banking. So it seems to be that, okay, we have the challenges with SMEs in terms of data availability and the cost because of the ticket size. But then using alternate data, we can do what is happening all over the world. So, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So we have the 5 digital banking licenses, but that there's still a way to go. They're going to do the pilots and then after that launch. But nothing really stops regular banks to go into digital SME banking. Using alternate data, using digital footprints to fill in the gaps where the regular data is not there. So any ideas regarding how that can begin to happen? What's holding them back? And why isn't what's happening globally happening here?
Does anyone want to take that, or Max? Yeah.
Well, I can try to take it because I think it's a very important question, which we at BI also asking ourselves constantly. So I think similar, like we heard today, SME obviously is a massive priority for the development of economies and countries. So we are consistently looking out for digital SME banks, even digital SME lenders. But the gap between what you see on the consumer side and what you see on the SME side, just in terms of empirical availability, is absolutely massive. The question why that is, I don't have a good answer. My first is probably trust, because the moment you do SME banking, again, you face a very a sophisticated customer who needs a much more variety of services, and the trust to do this with a newcomer is probably not there. Like in consumer banking, I think the use cases are much more simple, particularly the use cases to start with. So that is one hypothesis, but I don't think that can be the entire answer. So I'm still waiting, and we are still very much monitoring the space, because digital SME banking, I think, is also very much a space for the future. But we haven't, particularly in our markets, we haven't seen it blossoming yet.
But just to add to that, earlier we talked about the SME index that is coming up and the financial data exchange. The whole purpose is to provide alternate data, not only for the SMEs, but for anyone, where the banks can then do a risk assessment. And SMIDA just developed a toolkit which now is available for banks if they would like to utilize it for risk modeling as well. So yeah, these tools are available, and some will be available in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ji, that gentleman, if you could just raise your hand. Yeah.
Hi, this is Amir from Citi. Naman, I had a question for you. Picking up from your conversation earlier on the 4-party payment flow, can you just run us through what the journey has been for some of the other markets, primarily maybe India, and how can Pakistan learn from it? Because I heard 90% of UPI flows are on the 4-party payment model. And so what can Citi Pakistan or some of the other Pakistani banks learn from it? Because Pakistan is primarily a two-party model.
I'm going to keep it short because I wasn't expecting a city-to-city question, and half of the audience would be thinking this is a planted question, so I'm going to keep this pretty short. I think the key benefit is that when you look at the four-party model, you can have an account, a debit account, and a credit account in any of the bank accounts, right? But you can go to the app of a fintech, be able to link your debit account, be able to pay from an open banking perspective to any credit account. So all of that kind of open banking kind of benefits that come through, also the benefits that start coming up through a closed ecosystem. So a lot of these apps beyond the payment would give you a lot of the validation services. They would give you Benny account, they will give you a tax ID, they would give you recurring payments. So even from a corporate use cases perspective of a recurring payments, instant direct debit, right? A lot of these use cases to innovate and to add a lot of value becomes quite easy and significant in a very client-friendly, convenient manner on a four-party app. So I think that's been a big success mantra in certain places. But I think the jury is out whether two-party or the four-party is the right model.
We'll take one more question.
I'm Usman Sheikh from Asa Microfinance. Talking in perspective of we have a very different niche with reference to basic banking. We have a clientele of who are not too much exposed to the basic banking and services and ecosystem. We have clientele who are very much less banked. So what in terms of distribution, in order to find some sort of pitch, if we can have some use case from other countries regarding what's the biggest catch for a customer to go for the digital, number one. Number two, is that any sort of friction in the mind of the customers, right? What we have witnessed in our surveys and all, that people do not want to or opt for the digital, like with the clientele we have. So we have been facing these kind of situations. I have already served in commercial banks, retail banks as well, and this is the difference what I have observed for the microfinance sector clients over here in Pakistan right now. So if anybody, I could have some insight from the Naman as well. Like India and all those countries also must have been facing these challenges when they started digital and going to digital. So what could be the biggest catch for us to pitch them?
Got it. Naman, you want to take that as well? Ji. So like I mentioned before, the previous panel is also available to take any questions. From Pakistan Digital Authority, we have Sayyar Saab and some... Acha, if you want to address that. I think एक तो इनका खैर सवाल उससे था, it was related to more on the friction in terms of the customers, the microfinance sector that they serve, the digital adoption is very low. I believe that's what the question was, and how do you address that? Especially, yeah, Ji. So, who wants to take that? Naman, I think you would be the right person to do that.
Yeah, this one's working. So I think there's no straightforward answer to that question because the move from physical to digital is always complex. There are a few things which come top of mind, right? The first is a cost aspect. If the physical mechanism is cheaper for the consumer and the corporate than digital, the client would never move. And that is where a lot of the incentives or a lot of the cost aspects need to be kept in mind. Ideally, the digital should always be cheaper than the physical, right? So that is one part. The other part is the trust and the security aspect. There is a massive view still with a lot of consumers, corporates, that face-to-face banking, branch banking, and Max, you spoke about it, the benefits of it, how a lot of that is still very, very critical for the clients. So I think as the digital app or a digital portal more and more trust digital service angle, whether it's a chatbot, whether it's a consumer, whether it's a agent behind the digital. I think that again plays a massive role. So I don't think I also have a straightforward answer, but the impediments that you need to take care of is cost, service, trust, and reliability. I think if you're able to prove to the consumer that these four are taken care of in the digital mechanism, the movement happens from physical to digital, and it takes time. In none of the countries it's happened over months or years. I think in every place it's taken 5 to 10 years.
Aftab sir, you wanted to add?
I would just like to add for the experience we have in Australia. Yeah, it's a bank, digital bank, and they are very selective as well. Like the problems we are having in Pakistan of the digital literacy and so on. They have a very small customer service. Obviously, they use chatbots and everything, rest of it. So they received a call from a customer saying that we are having trouble in filling the application form. And you know what the response was? This is not for you. So I think it was so simple for them to decide that we don't want to take that client who is not literate enough that they can fill the forms for onboarding. So maybe you need to think along these lines.
Interesting. Okay, so thank you very much. I think we will end here. Sidra, over to you.